All right, guys. Today we're going to do a training. So far we've trained on a lot of different topics. We've done the sales cycle. So just so you know, Joseph, this is going to be a little different for you. Normally, like, we get more to the technique of sales. This is a little bit more informational. So today we're going to talk about the competition. So remember when we're talking about the competition, like the same things that we've all talked about, like, are going to be applicable here. So the sales cycle is going to be important. The scopes of the service is very important as well, because what we're going to do is talk about what scopes of the service, for instance, other companies do or don't do. So you need to remember the things that you've learned so far. They'll apply here. So we have offices, in New Jersey, Connecticut, Pittsburgh, and Delaware. Okay, so just some general information about switching over people from other customers. First of all, you're going to have a lot of customers who will say, "Oh, I've had this company for 3 years, but I just signed to renew with them. I just renewed with them." Typically, I actually don't even know of any exceptions. With almost every company, if they have been with that company for longer than a year, they can still cancel. So that is something to keep in mind. And even if they say, "I just signed a renewal," you just say, "Well, how long have you been with them for?" "Oh, this is my 3rd year with them." That's fine. You're still able to cancel. We can get you guys upgraded. Next, when you do a switchover, write down the name of that company and the name of that customer and reuse that later. So when you're talking to somebody, even if it's the next town over, you can say, "Hey, just yesterday I switched over to this lady named Jenny Bowers. She had Arrow, and what she didn't like about, the reason that we were able to upgrade her is because they weren't taking care of her ants properly." Does that make sense? So you can use that for your bandwagon approach. So when you run into more people with that company, you have a name and a story about that company. And chances are that person, if one company struggles to get rid of silverfish in this area, in the next area they're also going to struggle with silverfish. Next.
So rewinding really quick to just that top part that he talked about. If they've been with them longer than a year, normally they'll go quarter by quarter from then on out. Which means this: if they've been with them already a year, they don't pay a full contract. They don't sign up for a whole new contract. Normally it renews quarter by quarter. So every 3 months they just pay and they keep going. So there's no contract normally. That's how it is. Otherwise, some of the time they pay the full year, but they can get refunded if need be after that first year. Normally the first year, sometimes it's difficult, but sometimes they can still be refunded. It depends on the company. And we'll go through that more in depth too.
Absolutely. So does anyone have any questions so far? Okay. Next, so we're going to start with going over some of the big competitors that you'll see. So who here is going to Jersey? Okay, we have several Jerseys here. Oh, and some more Jersey kids just showed up. All right, so Viking is one that you will run into a lot. It's a regional pest control company. So to put this in perspective, you're going to have your local mom and pop shops that will do a city and then a couple cities around it, maybe even cover a state. Then you'll have some regional pest control companies that will cover like the Mid-Atlantic or the Northeast or like a region. And then of course you have like your nationwide companies. The nationwide companies that anyone will know of here are going to be like Orkin and Terminix. Those are probably the only 2 big names I can think of. So Viking is a regional pest control company. They're going to be typically in New England, and they're going to come all the way down to, I don't know how far south they go, but they're in Jersey. They'll probably be in South Jersey as well. I don't know if they go much further than that, but that's kind of our area. So we will encounter these people in almost every one of our markets. Viking is typically expensive. And the quarterly treatments normally aren't exorbitantly expensive, but they normally charge, year after year, they will charge you like an annual fee or an initial fee. So then an initial fee will normally be like $200 or $250, and then their quarterlies will go down to like $125 or $150. And normally you can bring that up with a customer and explain to them that, they're like, "Well, no, my quarterly is only $125. And you can explain to them, "Yes, your quarterlies are only $125, but year after year they're charging you your annual fee, your initial fee." And so you're going to want to go ahead and bring that up with your customers. Something that I personally encountered with a lot of my Viking switchovers is that they didn't do a good job with silverfish. And a lot of homes have silverfish. On the East Coast, where it's really humid, you're going to encounter a lot of silverfish. And so you can bring that up. Obviously, you don't just go in guns blazing and be like, "Viking, they don't do silverfish." You ask them a couple positive questions. "How long have you had them? Cool. Why did you originally get them? What do you like about them?" That's great. And so is there any, I understand they're a great company, but is there anything that they're not able to cover for you? I know a lot of companies, sometimes there's just a couple bugs here or there they're not able to quite wrap up. And typically with Viking, that's what will come out is that they're not able to handle your silverfish for you. As far as the scopes of the service go, who here can tell me what our scope, the 4 scopes of our service are? Not a manager. Sorry, Tim. I feel really bad for shooting you down.
3 feet up.
Okay, so we start. What's the foundation treatment? That's one. Yep, 3 feet up, 3 feet out.
Injection in the wall.
The interior crack and crevice treatment. Good.
Is that the eaves?
The eave sweep. Perfect. That's the next one. We have this giant brush that goes up around the eaves. Does anyone remember the last one? Granulation. There we go. Does that help you guys? Okay, so Viking typically does a foundation treatment and an interior treatment. What they skip out on is you'll have some people who well, some of your customers will say like yeah, one of the things that a lot of customers like that we do, a lot of the other companies don't, including Viking, is we're going to do this eave sweep for you. And customers are like, no, I saw them out there doing something. Occasionally, and once again, this is on a case-by-case basis, they will do a spot treatment of like some of the big problems that they can see, but they'll never go around every window frame, around all the doors, and around all the eaves around the entire house. And more often than not, they just won't do any eave sweep, period. Unless like they have to bring that up to sell that customer, they're not going to include that. Does that make sense? So that's something that's typically one of the scopes of our service that we can pitch, that we can add that on and still do the service for a little cheaper. Next is the granulation. They don't do any granulation. Yeah.
About like the garage and stuff, can we mention the garage like as an extra part of the service?
Yeah, absolutely. The garage, the shed, you can do the shed as well. Yep. And so go ahead. Anyone have another question or comment?
A lot of times these companies will charge extra for a lot of little details. So if you say, for instance, like around the pool, a lot of times they'll charge extra, or spot treatment they'll charge extra, or for certain pieces of the service. Like I'm sure Viking does a lot of good things, and I know a lot of the good things that they do, but a lot of times they charge extra for rats, or they charge extra for wood destroying insects, stuff like that. And so you'll realize this as you go, but understand that when you come across these companies, don't just look dumb and walk away like, oh, you're with the company? Cool, see you, dude. Because that's going to happen to you a lot. But switchovers are seriously going to be like 25% of all your sales, if not more.
So these competitors out there, basically, the reason that when you see somebody who has one of our competitors, as opposed to being like, crap, they have somebody and walking away, like your eyes should light up. These people are used to writing a check to pay for pest control. They're like your ideal buyer. And typically, in almost every case, we're able to offer them a superior service, and normally we can do it cheaper. And so Joe has this thing he talks about called his deep breath, where he tells you to just calm down with the customer and be like, listen, if you can work with me here and like just be brutally honest with them. And so that's what I started doing with switchovers. When I got somebody who just was like couldn't really convince them, I'd just be like, okay, here's the bottom line. If I can get you guys switched over and make it hassle-free, if I cancel your service for you guys, and then I can get you guys a superior service that does everything that they did and more for cheaper, why wouldn't you do it? And they're like, I guess that makes sense. Like, so let's go ahead and get this done. So like you have to remember, like you can be really real with people, but in almost every case, you can find why our service is better than theirs, and we can find a way to make it more affordable, especially because, like Joe said, a lot of these people will say that their quarterly is $125, but then they're paying an additional $30 a treatment to have their carpenter ants treated, or an additional $30 for this bug or that bug. And so a lot of them have like a basic coverage with additional fees. Yeah.
Yeah. So would we offer to cancel their old pest control service?
That's a big thing. I actually should have put that in the general information. And you'll get more comfortable with this as time goes on, but yes. You ask them, would you be okay if I called and canceled for you guys? You need to ask for their permission to do that.
And write it in the contract.
Yeah, you can
just
put
write
it
it in there as a
like,
note.
Yeah, like permission to cancel and have them initial it. And the reason why that's super big is because a lot of these companies know that they're overcharging. They know that they're making a big profit off of this person. So if you call up Viking and say, hey, if Sally calls up and goes, hi Viking, I'd like to cancel. This gentleman here is from Inside or Terminix. He's going to do it for way cheaper. They're going to say, how much? He's going to do it for $115 a quarter. You guys are doing it for $150. They'll go, well, we'll match their price. And obviously, like for me, I have like this personal grudge against companies that do that because I'm like, So what you're telling that customer, like what the customer doesn't see this because humans resist change, but what that customer doesn't realize is that they've been getting screwed for years, paying 150 when their company can obviously do it for 115 if they wanted to, but they won't. So that's why when you say, I'll go ahead and cancel that for you. Always offer and try to let them tell you, like try to get permission to cancel for them, because normally they like almost every company universally will offer to match price. And then people, like I said, humans resist change. They go, oh, you'll match the price? I mean, I don't have to fill out this guy's contract even though it's going to take 1 minute. Oh yeah, sounds good, bye. And then you lost the sale, right? So really important to try to get them to let you do it.
And we'll record a training. Tyler's very good at this. We'll record a training on just how to talk to somebody when you're switching them over from another company. How to talk to that person over the phone, the company. Okay, so we'll record trainings and we'll send them to you guys too.
That's my personal specialty. So
he is very good at that Indian accent.
Yeah, I switch over a lot of Indian people. And so if you call acting like a white boy when your name is like Rajesh Hamid, and you're like, oh, I'd like to cancel my service. And you're like, you're not Rajesh. So like, yeah. Okay, that N actually just moved down. But anyway, you have Orkin, and something to note with Orkin, they're one of the national companies. They're all over. They'll have advertisements on TV. First, we'll go with the positives. Their service is extremely broad. They cover a whole lot of bugs, a lot of different pests. That also includes the fact that, and that's one of the things that they will brag up, is that our service is enormous, the amount of things that we cover. The fact is typically they cover more than is needed. Most people don't need to be covered for, the Australian barking spider. Like they're not gonna run into that. And so like, typically it's more than is needed, but what that allows them to do is to justify charging a lot of money. And their prices are normally very expensive. So now we'll get into like the nitty gritty here. The reason they're so expensive is because their quarterly treatments are normally more expensive than ours. For each service, it's normally like $150 a service. The reason this comes out to be so much more expensive is because they almost exclusively treat bi-monthly. They'll do some monthly, but generally bi-monthly, like never quarterly.
That means every other month.
Every other month they're back. So that's 6 treatments a year. So imagine 6 treatments a year at $150. Like, you are paying a lot of money to get rid of your Australian barking spider. So like, people are typically like, when you're like, we're going to cover your ants, we're going to cover your carpenter ants, which is a big one on the East Coast. You show them the list of coverages we have, and while our list is this long, like, those are the ants. That's 99.9% of the problems they're going to have there. Even though like the list of ants bugs that Orkin covers is going to be gigantic, like a lot of those aren't even like native to our continent. So why does it matter,
And on top of that, even if they do get them, normally we're still going to cover them in our service. Yeah. Normally, even though it doesn't say every little detail, every little chemically changed spider or ant that's out there, we still are probably going to cover it. And so the add-on fees and stuff like that they put is all encompassing for theirs. That's why it's so expensive. Like, I've switched over Orkin customers that have been close to $1,000 most of the time, and it's like, holy cow! So you can easily switch them over.
Normally, the reason that these people get Orkin is because they saw a commercial and they saw a big old mouse in their backyard or their garage, or a rat or something, and so they freaked out and they called Orkin because that was the first company that came to mind. And Orkin said, yeah, we're going to do this for $900 a year. And they said, to get rid of my mice? Heck yeah. And so they don't realize that like they did no shopping around. A lot of these customers were basically taken. And so you can actually help them feel like they've been taken when you show up on their door and say, well, we're doing all of your neighbors out here. And we're covering everything that Orkin covers in essence. Even if it's not, like Joe said, it's not necessarily explicitly stated on the contract. Like, we'll spot treat for almost anything. And we cover a huge list of bugs. And we're going to do it for like literally half the price that Orkin's doing it for. And they're going to say, holy crud, I made a mistake. So that's really, Orkins are the easiest switchovers. Like, anyone will tell you that. So any questions about Orkin? Great company though. They do a really thorough service. So you're not going to be, you don't have to trash their service with them. It's just about price and bi-monthly treatments. And with the products that are, every pest control company uses, bi-monthly treatments are not needed. It's just a way for companies to charge more. Does that make sense? Okay, Cooper. Cooper's when it's a local company. It's kind of a mom and pop field, and it'll be in New Jersey, so we won't run into that in Connecticut or Pittsburgh. Cooper is normally expensive. It's normally not like vastly more expensive than ours, but say where we're charging $500, they're normally charging like $550 to $600. So it's not huge expensive. But what's interesting about Cooper is that most of these people have had Cooper for like anywhere between 3 to 20 years. But imagine a company. I mean, for me, I always just calculate you've been getting overcharged by $50 for 20 years. It's a lot of money. So some things that they don't do that we do. This is big. For what they're charging, they're not doing a whole bunch for you. So the de-webbing is huge. They do no de-webbing. In fact, they use these little Honda Element cars as their servicing vehicles. There's no way you can fit a de-webber or a ladder here. So that's not happening with them at all. They charge additional fees for carpenter ants and carpenter bees. And so that's one of the things. Carpenter ants we cover. Carpenter bees will spot treat at no additional charge. So you're going to run into people who are paying above what their $550 or $600 contract is. They're paying more when they run into these problems. So that's important. Cooper, do they do free retreatments? I actually don't remember.
Yeah.
Okay, most companies do free retreatments like we do, but we don't do any service fees, anything like that. So that's also important to know. Like, there's not additional fees for retreatments. Cooper people, their customers typically pay all up front, or they'll pay quarterly. It's about a 50-50 divide. That's good to know. When people are paying quarterly, normally like convincing them to cancel is a little easier, simply because they don't have to worry about whether or not they're going to get refunded the money that they already paid. But I believe Cooper will refund you the money after you're out of contract with them, even if you pay a year in advance. So like I said, their customers have typically been with them for years. While that does sometimes make for a harder switchover, that also means that when you switch them over, they're going to be very loyal customers. Obviously, they're not switching all the time. So don't give up just because they said they're with Cooper. And something to note is they have this really local mom and pop feel. So you have the ability, depending on where you're at, to kind of play with that, right? Like, oh yeah, they've been here for forever, been doing the same thing for a long time. Yeah, we're a big company. We've been the leaders in the pest control industry, innovating, blah blah blah. Use your strengths.
Tyler,
Yeah.
leave that one up for a second.
Okay.
Let's do I'm gonna do you stand over here. I'll do an example for you for Cooper. Now, this is the thing. In the markets that you're at, whether you're in Delaware, whether you're in New Jersey, Connecticut, or Pittsburgh, you're going to find some local mom and pop companies. And a lot of times the mom and pop companies, the customers are very, very loyal. They've been with them for 20 years, or they know the neighbor, or they know the owner, or they know the owner's dog, or whatever it is, that they have some type of tie to this company. Those are the type of people you actually want. That's the type of people that we want to get with Terminex and with Insight Pest Solutions. We want loyal customers. And so I'm going to show you kind of how I do it, and the reason why I actually love running into Cooper customers, because of the fact that they have such loyal mentalities. Okay, so let me use this. Okay, let's say we've already been. Actually, let's just do it from the start. Okay.
What do you want?
Hey, sorry, man. I don't want to bother you too much. My name's Joe. I'm with Insight Pest Solutions. You've probably seen our trucks out here quite a bit, yeah?
Maybe.
Okay. Well, we've been on this block, and we know this entire neighborhood seems to be with Cooper right now. I'm guessing you guys are with them too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what we've been doing for a lot of the neighbors, we've been switching them over, and normally we're saving them quite a bit of money. But more than anything, we're looking for those very loyal customers, which I'm sure you've been with them for how long? 10 years?
I'd say some people moved in about 6 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. So have you lived in New Jersey this entire time, or where are you from originally?
Yeah, I mean, I'm originally from New York, but we moved out here to Jersey. We
Okay.
just asked the neighbors. Everybody around here had Cooper, so that's what we call
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, our trucks have been up and down here servicing quite a few of them so far. We've been switching them over here and there, and we understand the loyal aspect of it, which I love. That's what we're looking for. Let me tell you one thing that the customers really love about our service. Now, up here in the eave and the gutter area, a lot of times you get like the spiders and some of the wasps up there. Is that right? Do you guys get them more around back, or is it kind of just in the front of the house?
I noticed some more on the garage, but I mean that's because I drive in and out of there more. I don't know.
Okay, so here at the garage, which is over here, not over there, Ed. Okay, so what my technician's gonna do is we have this pole, it's called a de-webber, and it extends about 15-20 feet. We have this brush on the end that we put this product on. Now this is something that most companies do not do, including Cooper. Not obviously say anything bad about them, it's just the fact of the matter. And what we do is this. We brush this product up around the eave and the gutter and around the entire garage area. what this will do is it'll make sure that these bees and these wasps and all the spiders don't keep coming back year after year. And so, especially for your wife, who I'm sure hates spiders, maybe you do too.
Bees, she's allergic to bees.
Okay, so specifically for those bees, it'll make sure they don't keep coming back year after year. Now, if we can get you guys on the route, we can do it right now for that first service for about half off.
I mean, I guess what's half?
Okay, how many bathrooms do you guys have?
2.
Okay, so for a home your size, I mean, normally it does get pricey when you call into big companies. It's the way it is. If you don't mind me asking, how much are you guys paying right now with Cooper?
I don't remember. I mean, I want to say it's like 150 maybe.
Okay, 150, like quarterly treatment, something like
I
that.
think so, yeah.
Okay.
Does that mean every time they come?
Yeah.
I think so.
Sometimes they come and you're not here, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. They just leave an invoice.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, so for a home your size, normally we tend to go inside a lot of times for the homes because you guys probably got carpenter ants every once in a while back in the day maybe, something like that. So on the interiors of the home, this is what we do, yada, yada, yada. And so I go in and I explain more details, but the point I wanted to get across right there is how you, what do you say, hedge the concern, right?
Yep.
You hedge the concern by when you get into an area that has Cooper, that has Humphreys, that has Arrow, you are ready to go off the bat. You mold with that neighborhood that you're in.
You beat them to the punch, so you neutralize their concern before they ever realize it's a concern. So you're like, yeah, a lot of your neighbors have Cooper, I'm sure you do. Then they can't go, I already have a pest control company, it's Cooper. They're like, oh yeah, I have Cooper. And then you just keep pitching, and then that's not a concern anymore. Does that make sense?
And then here's a big point. I wish Luke was here because Luke was with me when I switched over this customer from Cooper. It's like my pride and joy. This customer's been with Cooper for 17 years. And we were talking to him. Everything was the same basically. Pricing was even the same. I think we were actually charging him a little bit more. And this is what I did. I was just like, man, I know you've been with him a long time. Listen, Inside Pest Solutions, we're a pretty new company out here. We're looking for those absolutely loyal customers like yourself. And so if you give us a shot, we obviously want to do the best job possible because we want to keep you for years. We're looking specifically for those loyal customers like yourself. So give us a shot for a year. Try it out. See how you like it. Got nothing to lose. So if you just want to put your information right here, we'll go for 1 year and try it out. And it's something very similar to that. But that's the deep breath mentality. And you're just like, all right, man, listen. I understand you've been with him for forever. Try us out. See how you like it. Never leave a door without doing that deep breath mentality. Never leave a door.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same thing. Like Jeremy Rosenball, our Iron Man, sold like 800 accounts. He says that he takes somebody through the sales cycle 3 times before he quits. With us, I'd say take him through the sales cycle 3 times and then try the deep breath. If they're just giving you no, just say, listen, we're a new company out here in the area, Inside. It's our first time out here. We're looking for loyal customers. We're just trying to get our feet on the ground. If you can work with me, I can save you money. I can save you a lot of money and take care of a need of something that you already want. I mean, what do you got to lose? And if you tell them like that, and sometimes you're going to feel like you're begging. But at the end of the day, you're going to walk home with a paycheck. So, I mean, like, it's not that bad, right? But, like, and obviously, you don't want to be like, please. But, like, that's a way of essentially telling the person, like, let's be real for a second. When you take that deep breath, like, honestly, like, I told the guy, Joe laughed at this. I told the guy, he says, take a deep breath with me. That's what I told the guy. I was like, take a deep breath with me. I was like, because, like, we were going at it. He bought from me. It was, like, way funny because, like, he honestly was just like, it's like, we feel better now. I was just like, yeah. And then, like, we kept talking. And, like, it was really funny.
Along those same lines, if you're selling, for instance, preseason-wise, selling for Terminex, or in the markets in Connecticut or Pittsburgh selling for Terminex, you take a deep breath with him, and you're just like, listen, man, we're the biggest company out there. Try us out. See how you like it. Worth a shot. We'll give it to you for a better deal. And simple as that, and it's, like, so confident and so upfront that people are like, all right, let's try it out. Insight, the same idea, super confidence. But then it's the mom and pop feel, listen, try us out. See how you like it. We've been here for a while now. This is the 2nd year right now. See how you like it.
Yep. Okay, move ahead to double point. It's just point. I don't know why I'm all of a sudden having errors in here. I promise I edited this. But Point Pest Solutions. Just to to cover these really quickly, first of all, they're another door-to-door company. They're based out of Pennsylvania, but they do all their recruiting out here in Utah. So their reps are going to be from Snow College, and they're going to be from Utah State, Logan. So they were actually in our ward last year in New Jersey. They live like 30 minutes away from us or something like that. But you will occasionally run into them on the doors. And personally, point switchovers account for like, of all the switchovers I did, point is probably like 70% of my switchovers. Point were way easy switchovers for this big reason. First of all, their service is very similar to ours. I don't know that there's really any major difference other than the fact that they do have some add-on fees for a couple of like bugs. They do have like they'll charge you more for mice, for instance. I had a guy who switched over because of his mice.
And carpenter ants a lot of times.
And they will charge you more for carpenter ants sometimes. It's a case-by-case basis, but what they will almost always do is 5 services a year. So that's 5 payments. And it's kind of a joke because what they tell their customers is like, oh yeah, so we're going to do your initial, and then we're going to wait a couple weeks, like 3 weeks to a month, and come back and do your first quarterly. Which makes no sense because they just told the customer that their products will last for a quarter, and then they're going to come out and do an initial and then come back in a month. Like, why do you need to come back in a month? And so that's just a way for them. Like, this is what Logan texted me when I asked him. I was like, what did you find like the easiest way to switch over point was? And he's just like, just tell your customers like they're just masking the fact that they're trying to they're basically charging you $105 to put your name in a computer and get you going. That's how they're paying for like the corporate fees, to get ahead. So when you switch over a point person, it's really easy to just, I honestly wouldn't even ask how much you're paying because most people think quarterlies, quarter means 4, so they think they're paying 4 payments of 105. So normally what you do is walk up and be like, okay, so you have point, right? Yeah, it's like, okay, so you must be paying like an initial, so like what is that, $520 a year, something like that? 525, they're like, oh yeah. So then you've established really quickly, because customers will forget what they pay, but it's good to know it's at least 5 payments of 105, if not more. They paid, like I said, additional fees for the carpenter, ants, and bees, and rodents. They don't really have like the true blanket coverage. So they do, like I said, they're going to charge you. Once you have a mouse, you're going to call them up and be like, hey, can you come out and take care of my mouse? And then they tell their customers, oh, you're actually not covered for mice. But for the low fee of $50 more a year, we can cover you for mice. And at that point, when you have a mouse, you're saying, yeah, sure, I can do that. And then, like I said, they're based out of Pennsylvania. And when you're in New Jersey, that's really good. Even though Pennsylvania is relatively close, people like to support, a company that's more local. Insight is closer to, it's in Pennsylvania, it's in New Jersey, excuse me. So you can go ahead and say, listen, you're dealing with us, a company who's from New Jersey. We're here, we're close by, we can get here quick. I mean, you can play up those types of things.
And then on the other side, for those of you selling in South Jersey, Delaware, selling for Terminex, it's a different situation because you're selling for Terminex, but you're also having a lot of point contact. And in all honesty, in Pittsburgh, I think point's out in Pittsburgh too now. And so I personally have never run into a point customer ever myself, or not a point customer, a point rep on the doors. Never run into a point rep. Never run into any door-to-door rep in my entire years of selling so far. So that's me. He's run into a couple.
I ran into a couple of them.
But it's no big deal for us.
Truly, you scare them off because you are undercutting their price. And so, like, point people, like, truthfully, they fled from the areas where I was at when they saw you there. Like, I saw them, like, I waved to him, and then just went and knocked the next door like it was no big deal. Like, 5 minutes later, I see him on his phone, and his carpet leader grabs him, and they're gone, Because when you're coming around and offering a service, and they have no flexibility on their pricing, like, it's at least 5 payments and at least 105. So they're at least charging, $525. For me, when I'm like, I start at 125, and if I have to, I can work my way down, right? We have a little bit more. So I start at $500, but like you can be a little bit more flexible, especially if you know points in the area and you saw them. Then you go around saying, okay, yeah, I saw this, this other guy, one of our competitors, they're based out of Pennsylvania. We're just in the area offering a special. Obviously, we don't want to lose our loyal customers out here, so we're doing a special right now for $450. Just trying to beat their price, hedge out our competition. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. So like you'll run into that, and it's really not that hard to deal with that. Don't let that get in your head. And if they have switched, like if they have signed people up, like if they sign people up immediately, and not saying you should prey on your enemy, but you can switch their people over for like the first 3 days as well. So, okay. Oh yeah. Also, they have bad ratings on Better Business Bureau and Angie's List. It's just noted. They do. Okay.
Don't use that necessarily, but know that for your confidence sake. Like,
yeah.
You don't want to talk bad about the companies, but know that for your own confidence.
Yeah, don't bring that up. Western Pest Services. Okay. Western is another one of those regional companies that you'll probably run into from New England all the way down. It's kind of like along the eastern seaboard. It's typically more expensive. They're not as mom and pop feel, like I said. They have ladders on every truck, although, so like they don't do an eave sweep necessarily, but they have ladders to like get specific problems. Although I never saw a ladder be used with them. They have it, so it's good propaganda. But that's also they use that to like explain why their service costs more, because they're willing to go up on the ladders, and that also costs more for their company, more insurance. Typically, the customers will pay for a year in advance, but you will get, if they cancel, if they've been with that company for at least a year, when they cancel, they will be refunded that money. So I switched over a lady who was refunded. She paid like $500, and she was refunded $420 of it or whatever. So, any questions about Western? It's just a case-by-case basis, but they weren't spot treating her for these digger bees, so she had these big mounds all over her yard, and they weren't treating those for her, and then ants. They just couldn't get rid of her ants around the pool. Next is Ehrlich. Ehrlich is kind of similar. They're a regional company. They're not a national company, but they're very similar to Orkin in their service and their pricing. So they have a very good service. It covers a whole lot of pests, usually more than needed, but it's also typically very expensive.
They're big in Pittsburgh. They're a big company in Pittsburgh.
They're in Pittsburgh. We called the guy who sold in Pittsburgh 2 years ago, and he said he says they have a very good reputation, so that's good for them. It makes it a little trickier to switch over, but obviously they're more expensive, so the cost is a big deal. They do a full yard ticket and flea treatment, which might be one of your customers' objections. Like, please treat my whole yard, to which you can explain what you would do about that.
Yeah, so for Ehrlich and then Humphreys, which you'll see in a second, and even sometimes for Orkin, the customers will have a full yard treatment, which we don't do unless we charge extra for normally. But you don't have the way to overcome this is when someone says they get a full yard treatment. Oh yeah, they service my entire yard. Listen, what we try and focus on is around especially the home area. And obviously those ticks and fleas and those different little things try and hedge their way up into the house. We do two different things for them. One, we do a granulation. This granulation, 10 feet out from the home, it'll soak into the garden beds and the lawn, and what it'll do is it'll eliminate all those satellite nesting sites. On top of that, any big areas that you're seeing problems, if you get a lot of ticks and fleas around those, the fence line or something in that back, we can spot treat those certain areas. And that can all be included in our normal price. If they really, really, really want a full entire yard treatment, we can do that at an additional fee.
And truthfully, including that additional fee, we are still normally cheaper than them and Orkin as well. Because we normally charge an additional $100 was it for the lawn? For the full yard ticket and flea?
It depends on the size of the house, yeah.
Yeah, it's either you can do it
$50 even sometimes.
50 and $100. Like when we're charging $500 for our service and $100 for the yard, we're still at $600, and these guys are still at $650. So even then, you're still typically cheaper than them. So just kind of give you some confidence. Like Joe said, they have loyal customers. They really do, but they make better customers once you can switch them over. Arrow is one you'll run into in Jersey. They're kind of a Jersey-based company. They pay for 1 year up front, but it can be refunded. They also have very loyal customers, and I can't figure out what for, truthfully. Like Ehrlich earns it. They really work hard. Cooper, they're very friendly, and they very personal techs. I don't know what Arrow does to retain such loyal customers, but they've just been around for a while, so everyone knows the name. They have two main treatment programs. First, and this is where people get kind of confused. It gets a little hazy. This is a good thing to know for your customers. If they're paying very little for their coverage, it's because they're getting the general pest, which is cheap but very poor coverage. It doesn't cover you for carpenter ants, carpenter bees. It doesn't cover you for a whole multitude of things like
rodents a lot of times.
Rodents, yeah, mice. So it doesn't cover a lot of these little things. So they might be paying $400, but they're really not getting protected from anything that they actually care about. And then you have the people who do get their enhanced, or we put wood damaging pests, but I believe it's actually called their enhanced pest control treatment, which is including their carpenter ants, carpenter bees, and rodents. And for that, they're normally paying $600. So they're either paying $400 or $600, and we fit right in the middle of there, covering all the things, right? So whereas you tell them, listen, if you really wanted to get your carpenter ants treated, you'd have to be paying $600 with them. We'll get you guys done for $500. So good to know. Humphreys, the last one. I truly never ran into them. Joe did a couple times, I think. They're very expensive, and they're similar to Ehrlich as well. But they're a local version of Ehrlich. So where Orkin is kind of like the big one that has just ridiculous coverage, and then Ehrlich is the regional with over coverage. Humphreys is the local business with over coverage. So they're very expensive. They almost always do a full tick and flea treatment on the yard. But something really interesting about them is that they never go inside the house on quarterlies. And if they do, if you want them to come in because you are getting those ants in the upstairs bathroom, you're going to have to pay an additional fee for additional interior treatments. So that's something to note. We typically don't go inside the house on quarterly treatments unless they request it, in which case it's free. But we do want them to like ask for it because normally the products work for a year. But like a lot of people with Humphreys have been with them for a long time and haven't had the interior treatment since year 1 and this is year 8. And they don't want it because they have to pay additional. So that's kind of